that wonderful introduction by my good friend Mike Corrado. Everyone, this is Charlie. Charlie, say hi to everyone. Hi, everybody out there on the interwebs. Sit. Good job. Come a kiss. You're such a good boy. Lay down. So that's his official capacity, holding the stage down. Good boy, and just looking really cute. How's everybody doing this morning? Good. How's everybody out there on the inner world? Well, I'm going to take this opportunity to have an educational moment using my own career path. I started out in the military, as Mike said. I was 17 when I enlisted, didn't know anything about photography aside what I'd learned in my high school photography class. And yes, it was film. You guys are like, you don't look that old. I thank you. I thank you. I know I'm not putting words in your mouth, right? My job in the military took me all over the world. At first, I did intelligence, which meant I was, wait a minute, backing up. Intelligence in the military, oxymoron, right? And that's what I thought too. But I knew I wanted to be a photographer, and I heard about this really cool thing called combat camera, so I put a portfolio in an application, and then I got accepted. What I learned from my fellow senior military photographers was a lot about storytelling, photojournalism, how to go out and track down the stories and do it while in relatively austere conditions. For those of you who shot weddings, it's nothing compared to that kind of combat. That was a pretty good joke, right? No? Okay. All you wedding photographers out there, you tip of the hat to you. Now, as I evolved photographically, I began to look more and more at myself and what my vision was. And I really wanted to literally focus my lens on the human experience. Over the course of my travels, of course, combat is definitely a big part of being a combat photographer. But for me, I wanted to look at the impact on both the military personnel who were fighting, but also the community around them that were impacted by that. And again, teachable moments. After observing human behavior and seeing things happen repetitively, I could watch the body language, observe, and know what position I needed to be in to best allow myself for that right time when the action came to me. Ron McGill's sitting right here in the front row for those of you who can't see out there online. And he is a fantastic wildlife photographer, and I think Ron would agree that it's all about observing, being prepared and being in the right place and letting the action come to you. If not, you're going to be shooting a lot of back ends of birds as they're flying away, right? We don't want that. The other thing is knowing the technology that you have in your hands. And listen, we're friends. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. Technically, when I was younger, was not the most proficient behind the camera in terms of what exposures were. I could see really cool images in my head, but translating that technically was not my forte. I learned really, really hard. And my husband, who's standing behind the cameras, y'all who are online, is a Nikon representative. We were in the military together, and he would give me such a hard time. But failure is part of learning success. And it seared into my brain that when low light, I needed to up my ISO. And if I wanted to have a really slow shutter speed, or a really cool pan, I had to slow my shutter speed down. But those techniques are really what made translating what I saw in front of me, capturing action like this one, to be able to pan and capture that moment. The other idea was, how was I going to use every part of my frame to let the viewer back home, thousands and thousands and thousands of miles away from the action, be right in that moment with me? And a lot of that was lens selection and knowing what each lens did. There is a tool for every job. And it's important to know which tools to go to in the peak of that moment. And again, whether you're a wedding photographer or you're fantastic, by all means, Ron, amazing animal photographer, these techniques and these lens selections and all of this knowledge comes really, really in handy when that moment happens. And that leads me to the next part, moments. You have to know technically what you're doing. You have to be able to be in the right time to let those actions come to you. But knowing what light is doing. You're like, I don't understand. What do you mean? Light and color, they mean something in an image. They can make you feel something. It takes a one-dimensional photograph and turns it into something you can reach out and touch. That, to me, is important. The other part is that human experience. And I'm going to say this over and over again because my time in the military really shaped my vision. It did not escape my notice that the young children of Iraq, by this time, this image was taken in 2007, we'd been in that country a long time. And this baby right here was born into war. So I knew I wanted to get out ahead of the action and get the response of what her feelings were when someone came into their house. And to me, again, that's human nature, human observation, being out ahead of the action and being there to capture those moments, having the right lens on, knowing my exposures, and bringing all of those together to capture that decisive moment. Incorporating color. Color relates mood. If you're out there and you're thinking, well, I don't understand this concept, when you say red at Valentine's, you think love, and you get a little feverish, and everything seems kind of warm and bubbly. When you see blue, you think cold and icebergs, and you think, I need to get a jacket. But it also sets this mood, maybe a darker mood, right? Coupled with light, coupled with moment. Every inch of your frame adds information. That is what I learned from my time in the military. These are the technical things I learned. What I can't translate to you is what I learned as a human being. From my time in the service, I learned that each and every person has an incredible story. They start somewhere. You look relatively young, right? So you started somewhere, and everything that you've learned and that I learned over the course of my life has built me into the way I perceive the world around me. No one's going to see the world the same way I do. And those experiences forever changed me in the service. From the loss of my friends, from seeing others' loss, witnessing what human beings do to each other, all of those things really stuck with me. And then being in combat changed the course of my life. So after 10 years in service, I had been hit by a couple of roadside bombs, and the doctor said, Stacy, you can't, well, they called me Sergeant Pearsall at the time, but that's in the past. They said, Stacy, you can't hold cameras for any prolonged period of time. You're not allowed to stand. You can't lift heavy things. They kept telling me all the things I couldn't do. No, 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 no. And by the way, we don't need you in the military anymore. So suddenly, my whole identity was gone. I was in physical pain. I had a lot of physical limitations. And emotionally, I was really distraught. It's like being in a 20-year marriage and suddenly you wake up and your spouse is like gone. That was the military for me. But what was great was sometimes things happen in our lives that are unpredictable, and sometimes we just need to ride the wave. A path opens up in front of us. I was at the VA one day, and as you can imagine, my face isn't the one that's conjured in people's minds when we say the word veteran. And that did not change for my fellow veterans in the VA hospital either. Most of them are men, middle-aged or older, and that's fine. Loved every one of them, my brothers. And one day, I was at my VA appointment, waiting 2 hours past my appointment time, as per usual. The Red Cross, bless their hearts, had a table of cookies and sodas out, and they were passing them out to veterans. And I thought, wow, I'm pretty hungry. It's lunchtime. I went up to grab a soda, and she swatted my hands away and said, that's for veterans. Okay. As you can imagine, feeling like a feather in the wind. I had nowhere to land, or so I thought. And one day, this gentleman, he came down and he sat next to me and he was staring at me in his peripheral vision, and I was just getting so mad because up until that point, I felt like I was being stared at, the anomaly, the pretty penny in the room, right? Something shiny and new. And I had the little devil on my shoulder, and he was like, just tell him where to go. And it was a really hot place, and that was not a nice thing to say. Instead, the human, the empathetic, the compassionate person that is me deep down inside turned to him and said, is there something I can do for you? And his face lit up. And here's a man, Mickey Dorsey, the late Mickey Dorsey now, told me about liberating a concentration camp, surviving Normandy. I was sitting next to a national treasure. All the while, I'm thinking, this guy's prejudiced against me because I'm a woman and I'm here and I'm a minority, whatever, whatever. And I'm the one who passed judgment before knowing who he was. That thought, that emotion turned me upside down because that negativity was never who I was. And I thought, if I didn't know this man's story and I made my own presumptions, imagine what people are doing to the whole veteran community. So I was determined that I would bring my camera and I would take portraits of veterans while I was waiting for my appointments. If I've got 2 or 3 hours to burn, might as well make the most of it, right? And despite my physical limitations and despite everything the doctors were telling me, I had the camera back in my hands. Certainly I felt pain, but when I was in the midst of really awesome conversations with these veterans, all of that went away. So I set this crazy goal. I needed something that would put one foot in front of the other. Motivation, drive, initiative. And all of that was centered around what I was eventually to call the Veterans Portrait Project. I needed a lifelong goal, so I said I would photograph veterans in every state and province from which the U.S. recruits military members. Pretty lofty goal, grant you. It has been 10 years since doing that, and I have photographed over 7,500 veterans. Was my last count in the spring of 2000, or in the spring of last year, 2018. It's a new year. In 29 states. 29 states in 10 years. Like, I am surprised that Charlie has lasted this long. That's why he's sleeping, y'all. He's got to catch up. Okay. Now, why do you think I am using this as a lesson? Well, let me just say, we all start somewhere. I was never a portrait photographer per se, and I had a lot to learn. While in the service, Joe McNally is one of my fellow ambassadors. That's a crazy thing to say, by the way. I'm still getting used to that. I love you. Joe's off in the wings. So it was in 2002, I met Joe McNally, and he was teaching an SB class for military photographers like myself. I was 22 years old. Joe was a mere 30. And he taught me some basic instructions about lighting. I would say that I maybe used it once a year because as a photojournalist, we don't necessarily use light. So when I began the project, I was literally all thumbs. But the biggest initiative and the biggest thing I can recommend to each and every one of you is just try it. I had a lot of failures in the military behind the camera. But the ones that stuck with me were the lessons I learned from those failures. So I had an SB kit, that basic SB kit. And then when I left the service, I had one camera and a couple of lenses. It made sense that because when I was in the service, I shot Nikon and loved it, that I would transition over, and I stayed with Nikon that whole time. For any of you who are interested to know what I travel with now, you can, for anybody that's at home, take a screen grab, make a mental note. All of this fits in one case that's smaller than Charlie, and he can push it through the airport for me. I know, right? Now, I had a small SB kit, a little small case, and basically, this is all the light that I had. This image is what my setups looked like that first year I started. I would set it up in the hallway at the VA hospital, and I would take portraits of veterans who were hanging out just like me, wanting to burn up some time, and I'm like, hey, I'm burning up some time, you're burning up some time, let's get to know each other. As that evolved, and as I set that goal to photograph veterans in every state, so did my kit. Listen, everybody, I realize having this profession or this hobby or this love of photography is a really, really expensive one, and we have to make choices, hard choices. And I see you guys are like, yes, yes. It did not happen overnight. Start with one piece. And for me, what I would do is I would take a paid assignment, I would squirrel money away and say, I really am going to use this money for that 105 I really, really wanted, and I'm going to add that. That's my goal. And I'm going to do this exhibition, I'm going to sell these prints so I can buy this light, because I need it. And now this is what I have. It looks daunting, I know. But all of that fits in these 3 bags. The idea is to go as light as possible to make the most out of what I can, out of the least amount of cases possible. And bless the heart of all my assistants that I have ever had in the past, because they're the ones that actually have to schlep it from the belt to the cart and from the belt to the cart. So I try to keep that in mind. Right. The other thing I had to do when I started this project was to make a decision. Was I going to have a colored series or a black and white? And I thought, this is a lifetime goal. I need to make sure that this series is cohesive over a long duration of time. For me, and when dealing with military veterans who maybe come in their uniforms, there's a lot of color and a lot of distraction, a lot of bling. Taking black and white really just eliminates all of those distractions and brings it right down to that human being, that human experience, and that interaction, and that expression. I feel like, no. It's really, really big. It's big. Sorry. Okay. As equipment evolves, I started out with when I first got out of the military, I started out with a D2. And I went to the D3 and the D4, and then I switched to the 800 and the 810, 850. And when the Z series came out this last spring, I was like, I think I want to try that. So I did a couple of shoots with the Veterans Portrait Project with it, and these images were taken in Texas. I had my 850s there with my 70 to 200, my 24 to 70. And then on the Z, what I did was I put my favorite lens on there. This is my favorite lens, the 105, okay, using the adapter. And that's all I used for it on that day. And the reason I did that was because of this. I could see every single hair and nook and cranny, and that was pretty awesome. The 850 is amazing, but this with the 105 is like beyond. What do you think? Pretty crazy, right? What had occurred to me, and everything is a learning process. And as I get new technology, I admittedly don't read manuals. I know my husband right now is like, yes, she doesn't read manuals. I rely on him to read it and translate it to me in a way that I can best understand it, because if you're anything like me, you read words and then it turns into wah, 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 wah. Just know this. Now that I have the Z7, I can actually shoot live in black and white. Whereas before, when I was photographing, I would have to pre-visualize in my mind where my light was in order to pre-visualize what it was going to look in a monochromatic setting. Because my raw files, they capture in color. My D850s capture in color. But I'm a black and white photographer. Now having the Z7, I can do it straight in black and white, which is pretty cool. The other thing about this project is I have a Rolodex, a mental Rolodex of what things looked like live, okay? So all the experiences and all the things that I saw in uncontrolled situations, I could replicate through my own lighting. While talking to somebody and getting to know them, each and every person that I meet, I have 10 minutes typically, a 10-minute window to make an impression, to make a connection. Yeah, I got my eyes on you. To make a connection. With military veterans, we have a commonality, something that we can reach on right away. And I can break down that barrier and use that to my advantage with observing their body language just as I have always done. And that watching how their body language changes, how the energy changes through the conversation we're having, and directing the dialogue I'm having with them to actually invoke those emotions and those physical responses coupled with the light and capturing the moments, just as I did in photojournalism. That's what makes the project so successful. And if your aim is to try portraits, and you haven't yet because it seems really intimidating, for one, you've got to set up lights. And then two, you have to be the director of this whole entire shoot. And then you have to capture moments. And you're like, forget it. I'm just going to go and photograph a sunset on a dock, right? It's much more relaxing. In the immortal words of Joe McNally, just start with one light. Just start with one camera and one lens and one light. It's not that complicated if you simplify it in your mind and just put one foot in front of the other. Once I have established a connection with somebody, and that usually happens in the first minute, the energy that you have with somebody and the energy that you present to others is going to directly impact the success of the rest of your shoot. Can you come up for me? What's your name? Yasmin? Yes, you. Come on. We're going to do a quick thing. Unexpected to the Nikon folks, sorry. Come on up. Hey, how are you? I'm Stacy.
Pleasure to meet you.
Good, nice to meet you. Where are you from?
San Jose, California.
Okay, not too far, right?
Not far.
Are you a photographer?
I am, yeah.
What do you like to shoot?
I'm doing real estate right now, but I started in portraiture.
Did you like it?
I loved it.
But you were like, I don't want to do people anymore. I'd rather photograph houses that don't talk back.
Yeah.
Yeah? Oh.
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, what I love, and thank you so much for coming up here. I know it's like on the spot. But when we meet somebody, we're going to open our bodies to them and make really good eye contact. And the whole time I'm observing her, I know what buttons to push now. Because now I know that you would much rather work in real estate photography than you would with people, right? Do you see how her face changed every single time we touched on that? There it goes again. And that took, what, 10 seconds? Give me a hug. You're a good sport. Give her a hand, please.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Two seconds. Oh, we got it! Yay to the AV Corps! Thank you.
it's a wireless thing.
Well, I appreciate it. Sorry. Okay, so the summation here. Here's the thing. Whether you're going to do portraits, or you want to start a personal project, or you want to get to do a series, or you want to learn new gear, you just have to get behind the camera. You've got to get the camera in your hands. We are human beings, and we come up with self-defeating words in our heads every single moment. I don't want to look stupid. I don't think I'm going to go to that camera club because I'm the only one that really doesn't know how to shoot in manual exposure mode, and that's all they're doing today. I've never done lighting before, and I'm really, really scared, and I really don't even know what to do. You know what? We're friends. I did not know what to do, but I knew that through the success I learned from failure, I was going to be better for it. You're going to be better for it. So I encourage you to take something new, try a new project. If you want to throw it by me and I can offer you some tips and tricks, I'd be happy to do that. So I'm going to be over here after this session. If not, you can follow Charlie and me on social media. And if you'd like to learn more about Charlie, check out America's Vet Dogs at americasvetdogs.org. If you want to learn more about my project, veteransportraitproject.com. And thank you, Nikon, for giving me the platform, for Joe and all the other folks, Ron, for being inspirations to me. I thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to seeing your photography in the future. Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, Nikon Ambassador Stacy Pearsall, stick around. If you love sports photography and you want to know how to make